The mother elf explained a rift had formed when a foreign being entered the Salamander continent, causing chill to leak through and freeze Arcadia. Roman wondered if she meant Alexander, or even himself. She continued that weakening dimensional walls allowed Graxar to accept demon realm power, turning him into a demon. She warned this was just the beginning. The being who shattered the balance must be eliminated to prevent total collapse. The mother elf described the Demon King, a godlike entity currently bound by laws. Once fully descended, nothing could stop it. Roman realized why Kronos had abandoned pride for a truce with Dmitri. They anticipated the dimensional chaos. If Graxar was merely a subordinate, human forces alone couldn't prevail. Roman reflected that his own existence might serve as a counterbalance. In his previous world, he had been too powerful, unable to fully manifest heavenly realm arts. Demon realm foes could finally push him to his limits. When asked his stance, Roman said he made no promises, but would remove any obstacles in his path. The mother elf offered a gift, communion with the world tree for glimpses of past, present, and future. Though typically reserved for her alone, they made an exception for Arcadia's savior. Roman accepted, approaching the frozen, withered giant. Its skeletal branches loomed like a tombstone for the continent. Touching the bark triggered a golden aura, enveloping both him and the tree. Ice melted from its surface, steam rising as life returned, green buds emerging, bark smoothing. Teresa watched in awe. Roman's consciousness detached, becoming a weightless spirit of light. Roman found himself in Kronos' founding emperor's hidden chamber. Hooded figures knelt before Alexander, reporting unrest. Duke Vito and others, resentful of Valhalla's corruption, were rallying nobles. Civil war loomed if suppressed by force. Alexander smiled darkly, dismissing Roman Dmitri as insignificant. He ordered preparations. The moment Valhalla fell into chaos, their opportunity would arrive. Roman understood Alexander's silence. They waited like scavengers for the perfect strike. The scene shifted to Queen Isabel, severely wounded, slumped against a tree. A soldier urged her to flee to Luna, as Kronos had discovered their plans. She refused, citing her prophesied destiny. Having sent her followers to death, she couldn't abandon them. Rising despite her injuries, she ordered Knight Commander Leo to return to Luna. It was a queen's command. As she vanished into the darkness, Roman's consciousness returned. He connected the visions. Valhalla, demons, Alexander, Isabel, all pieces of encroaching darkness. Following Isabel would reveal the full truth. Elves knelt before Roman, pledging their race's loyalty. Flashback to the golden resonance. The mother elf recognized his power as flames of the fire demon, now bringing life. The world tree regenerated before their eyes, their centuries-old wish fulfilled. Tears flowed as Teresa declared Roman the prophesied savior, ordering all to follow him. Jero and Caden arrived from the forest edge. Jero bowed deeply, grateful for Luna's salvation, offering his service. Roman asked Caden about their contract terms. Caden confirmed Luna's loyalty to Dmitri in exchange for aid. Roman noted Dmitri had fulfilled its end by eliminating the orcs. Turning to the elves, he rejected uncompensated loyalty. The mother elf replied that the world tree's revival through his power was reward enough. Arcadia now had hope. Roman accepted. In return for their service, Dmitri would protect both elves and Luna. He stood as undisputed guardian of the continent, having seen its threats and secured its key allies. As Roman Dmitri navigates alliances and hidden agendas, visitors from Valhalla arrive with divided loyalties. What game is the Emperor playing? Arcadia's top priority became self-sufficiency through collective strength. Elves would focus on farming and cultivation across the region. Humans and other races divided remaining labor among themselves. Using the World Tree's power, they established a war gate linking Dmitri to the Salamander continent, creating a secure trade route. Without developing independent survival capabilities, Arcadia's downfall was inevitable. The meeting concluded, and elders from various races returned to Dmitri Castle in Goddess Mountains. Someone presented a report. Odelia's condition worsened daily. With the royal family vanished, Conflicts erupted everywhere. Southern Kronos states, Umberto, Redford and Fronter, insisted on direct talks regarding the crisis. Roman Dmitri asked about the investigation he had ordered. Results showed Queen Isabel's last trace in the Kingdom of Winter. She reorganized her forces there before disappearing again, destination unknown. Roman inquired about Connual and Commander Jonathan next. 2 guests from Valhalla had arrived, Sanchez and Count Bragan. Sanchez, disciple of Sanchez Morales, led key rebel forces. Count Bragan appeared loyal to Valhalla's emperor. Amid these complications, the meeting ended for now. Count Bragan contemplated his mission. Pressure Roman Dmitri to prevent him from joining Duke Victor, no matter the method. This task proved difficult, as Roman operated in a world of power where persuasion rarely worked easily. A servant informed Bragan that Lord Roman was occupied and unavailable. Bragan wondered if Roman had met Sanchez first, given rumours of Valhalla's 3 visitor factions as dangerous rebel influences. Later, Sanchez met Roman. He sought aid against Valhalla's emperor. Roman explained the empire's split. The emperor's faction versus rebels aiming to restore Valhalla's foundational principles of nature. The emperor's strongest warriors and army remained blindly loyal. Sanchez pressed for direct support to advance Valhalla. Roman refused outright involvement, as it would undermine the rebels' legitimacy. He questioned why rebels needed him if they truly had popular backing. True removal of the emperor required Valhalla's own strength. Roman offered indirect aid under conditions, a temporary alliance until Kronos fell, ensuring Valhalla stayed out of his path. That evening, Count Bragan requested another meeting, but Dmitri Castle replied that the young lord remained busy with private matters. Wait in the guest room. Days passed. Bragan's patience wore thin by the 3rd morning. He summoned Billy, ordering a meeting date by any means, even involving the Empire directly. Billy arrived at Dmitri Castle, meeting Hans, Roman's trusted aide. He demanded Count Bragan couldn't wait longer. A date would let them leave immediately. Hans calmly stated the young lord allowed no visitors until his private work finished. Billy lost his temper, insisting the request be forwarded. Hans refused, deeming forced meetings inappropriate. Billy moved to grab him, but a cold voice stopped him. "Lower your hand." Billy turned to see Kevin, Dmitri's most fearsome warrior and team member. Kevin approached slowly, voice icy. "What do you think you are?" Threatening Hans on Dmitri soil. This moment revealed to Valhalla's envoys the depth of Roman Dmitri's power. Not just his army, but his people. Loyalty ran through every layer, making intrusion impossible. Kevin confronts a Valhalla knight who crossed a line in Dmitri territory, unleashing a lesson in loyalty that echoes Roman's past ruthlessness. Count Bragan's patience frays as delays mount, leading to a tense meeting where power dynamics shift irreversibly. One man's insult becomes an empire's warning. Kevin positioned himself firmly in the room, his gaze locked on Billy with unyielding focus. He questioned Billy's audacity in threatening Hans within Dmitri walls. Billy shifted uncomfortably, dismissing the reaction as overblown and attempting to deflect. Kevin held his ground, his voice steady as a thickening red aura pulsed around him. Billy snapped back, declaring himself a Valhalla knight unbound by local rules, viewing Hans as insignificant. The room went silent. Kevin struck, a sharp slap that snapped Billy's head aside. Billy froze in shock, hand rising to his cheek. Kevin followed with more blows, each precise and unrelenting. To Kevin, Hans wasn't a servant. He was family who had supported Kevin's kin in their darkest times. Insulting him crossed an unforgivable boundary. Billy collapsed to his knees, bloodied and dazed, muttering his Valhalla status in disbelief. A private soldier from a duchy had overpowered him effortlessly. Kevin loomed above, red aura flickering like restrained flame, offering a story rooted in Roman's teachings from a Barco family event, where insults to Dmitri met swift, brutal ends. Kevin recalled Roman's advice, learn to judge true worth. Billy fit the profile perfectly. With a grim smile, Kevin resumed, leaving Billy broken amid blood spray. Later, bandaged and slumped, Billy faced Count Bragan, whose rage simmered beneath the surface. Bragan saw the incident as Roman's deliberate provocation to provoke Valhalla emotionally. He resolved to endure, plotting revenge through patience until facing Roman directly. Meanwhile, Roman ended a magical communication with southern Kronos kings, Umberto, Redford, Fronter, agreeing to joint action on Odilia's refugee crisis. Hans entered. Roman stated it was time to meet Count Bragan, a subtle smile indicating full control of the timing. They sat across, tension thick. Bragan commented on the week's delay casually, though anger showed. Roman sipped tea, admitting busyness and suggesting advance notice for future visits. Bragan shifted to Billy's incident, demanding accountability for dishonouring a Valhalla knight. Roman countered that Billy struck first. Bragan insisted on status difference between servant and knight. Roman revealed Hans had been offered nobility for loyal service, but chose to stay as butler, family equivalent in Dmitri house. Bragan pressed that relations with Valhalla demanded consideration. Roman's eyes sharpened. Why should they refrain from touching Valhalla people? Bragan fell silent, sweat forming. Roman dismantled his delusions, recounting Valhalla's festival assassination attempt and follow-up schemes via Kronos. Roman's demeanour grew colder, dark purple aura filling the room with crushing pressure. He challenged Bragan, convince him why execution shouldn't happen here. Bragan appealed to pragmatism. Past enemies needn't be future ones, offering non-interference in Valhalla's civil war, even aid against Kronos. Roman rejected the empty promises. With Kevin's shadow looming, Bragan's pride crumbled to survival instinct. Roman saw no value in letting him live. Far away, Marquis Vella's office bustled until a soldier delivered a wooden box from Count Bragan. Vella smiled, expecting success against Roman. Confidence faded as he opened it. Inside, amid dried bloodstains, lay Bragan's severed head. Silence gripped the room. Vela screamed Roman Dmitri's name in panic. The message was clear: no interest in games from those who sought his destruction. Marquis Belfard entered Valhalla's grand hall carrying a wooden box. He presented it to the Emperor, explaining Roman Dmitri's message. Count Bragan was dead. Roman hadn't just rejected their terms, he'd severed the Count's head and returned it. The Emperor showed no surprise, resting his chin on his hand with detached indifference. The court erupted in outrage. One official demanded immediate military action, crush Duke Vieto's rebels first, then ally with Kronos against Dmitri. Count Gomez of the Conservative Party intervened. He noted Roman's meeting with Sanchez proved his rebel support. Gomez proposed a psychological approach, exploiting Valhalla's pure blood ideology and warrior pride. Public sentiment would turn against rebels if Roman, an outsider, dominated their liberation. Gomez requested permission to contact Roman directly, baiting him into recorded proof of interference that could sway public opinion. Marquis Belfard supported the plan. The Emperor dismissed them with a wave, leaving Gomez with a predatory smile. In a darkened chamber, Gomez activated a communication crystal. Roman's holographic image appeared. Gomez referenced the gift, questioning if brutality defined Dmitri ways, and warning their relationship was irreparably broken. Roman called his words amusing, reminding Gomez that Valhalla attempted assassination first. Compromise was never possible. Gomez acknowledged Roman's rise from Cairo, but warned against overstepping. Gomez activated a hidden recorder, mocking Roman's rebel support as insufficient against Valhalla. Roman countered. What did Duke Vieto's actions have to do with him? He'd already stated his position clearly. Roman dismissed Valhalla's civil war as unimportant. The real issue was their arrogance. Gomez realized the recording captured Roman's personal contempt, not political alliance, useless for propaganda. Roman presented one path to restoration. The Valhalla Emperor must personally visit and seek forgiveness. An official screamed in outrage at the demand. Roman ignored the outburst. Dmitri now officially recognized Valhalla as a hostile state. The crystal went dark. Marquis Belfair acknowledged they'd fallen into Roman's trap. His cunning exceeded simple schemes. Belfair studied the strategic map. Kingdom of Hector between them would grant Roman passage to Valhalla's northern border. He ordered immediate northern military deployment to avoid a pincer attack with internal rebels. A messenger delivered catastrophic news. Duke Vietto's rebels assaulted Hernan's city. The fortified walls lay in ruins as rebels poured through breaches. Duke Vietto led personally, axe-cleaving imperial guards effortlessly. Amid burning streets, Vietto addressed soldiers and citizens. He offered surrender terms, promising to restore Valhalla's true warrior glory, tarnished by the current regime. At rebel suppression headquarters, Count Gomez stared at tactical maps, reeling from Hernan's rapid fall. He ordered mobilization of Valhalla's top warriors, except Caesar by the emperor, to crush the rebellion decisively. He identified Buleras as Vietto's main threat. Concentrating elite forces offered quickest victory. A night burst in. Top warriors couldn't mobilize. They'd been summoned to a decisive battle. Gomez paled. Valhalla's sacred tradition bound top warriors to death matches, superseding military orders even during war. He demanded who initiated it. The night revealed Ars, third ranked, challenged Alvarez, second ranked, to battle. Gomez stared blankly. Valhalla's two greatest assets would fight each other to the death, removed from battlefields precisely when Roman's war declaration activated. Perfect chaos at the worst moment. An imperial summon was issued, and the strongest fighters of Valhalla gathered in the capital. But this meeting didn't feel normal at all. There was tension in the air, and everyone knew the reason behind it. Roman Dmitri, Alvarez, the rank 2 fighter of Valhalla, looked around in frustration. To him, this wasn't the same Valhalla anymore. One by one, their strongest warriors had fallen. Morales was gone, then Barbossa, and even Roderick couldn't survive. And on top of that, Aries, who was rank 3, had chosen to follow Roman Dmitri and left Valhalla behind. For them, this situation was completely unacceptable. Just then, the doors slowly opened, and Aries himself walked in. He looked completely calm, as if nothing had changed. He casually greeted everyone, which only made the situation more tense. Alvarez immediately got irritated. He couldn't understand how someone they considered a traitor could walk in here with so much confidence. But Aries didn't see himself as a traitor. As far as he was concerned, he was still rank 3 of Valhalla, and without wasting any time, he directly challenged Alvarez to a deciding duel. The entire room went silent. A deciding duel wasn't just a normal fight. It was a sacred tradition among the top-ranked fighters. Some of the members tried to interfere, especially those ranked below Aries, but he made it very clear that no one below his rank had the right to step in. This wasn't something they could interrupt. After a brief moment of silence, Alvarez accepted the challenge. The scene then shifted to the Valhalla temple, where the duel was about to begin. As both fighters stood facing each other, Alvarez spoke confidently. He reminded Aries that history always repeats itself, and that Aries had already lost to him multiple times before. But instead of reacting, Aries simply smiled, as if none of that mattered anymore. The duel finally began, and in the very next moment both of them rushed forward. Their swords clashed again and again, creating powerful shockwaves. The intensity of their exchange left the spectators stunned. Even though Aries was holding his ground, most of them still believed that Alvarez had the upper hand. Alvarez admitted that Aries had improved a lot, and his swordsmanship was impressive. But according to him, the difference in their aura was something that could never be overcome. To prove his point, he launched a powerful attack. For a moment it looked like his sword had pierced through Aries, but it turned out to be just an afterimage. Aries had already moved. Seeing this, Alvarez realized that he could no longer hold back. He decided to end the fight with one final attack. His aura suddenly exploded, filling the entire area with overwhelming pressure. The spectators were forced to step back because of the sheer intensity. Then, Alvarez used his secret technique, explosion smash. The attack landed perfectly, and for a moment, he was sure that he had won. But the next second, something unexpected happened. From within the smoke, Aries walked out, completely unharmed. Before anyone could even react, Aries counterattacked instantly. His strike was fast and precise, and it was fatal. Alvarez's swords fell to the ground, and in the very next moment, even his arm was severed. Blood spread across the battlefield, and shock filled the faces of everyone watching. That's when the truth was revealed. Aries had reached an entirely new level. He had become a 6-star swordsman. From the very beginning of the fight, he had been holding back his true power. What followed was pure domination. Aries continued attacking without giving Alvarez any chance to recover. The spectators couldn't believe what they were seeing. The man they thought would win was completely overwhelmed. At the same time, one of the observers finally understood what was really going on. This wasn't just a random fight. This was part of Roman Dmitri's plan. He had already sent his forces to the northern front to separate the Emperor's army, and now he had used Aries to eliminate Alvarez. Everything had been calculated from the start. Realizing this, panic began to spread among them. They understood that if this continued, they would keep getting controlled by Roman's strategies. Left with no other option, they decided to abandon their own principles and take immediate action. An order was given to arrest Aries right then and there, but surprisingly, no one moved. Because deep down, everyone already knew things were no longer under their control, and with that, the balance of power had completely shifted, and this was only the beginning. Before the journey even begins, we hear the words of a man who already understood how dangerous this place had become. A loyal retainer recalls what his lord told him right before leaving for Valhalla, and those words don't sound like motivation. They sound like a warning. He says Valhalla has completely lost a warrior's pride. Think about that. A land built on strength, discipline, and respect for combat has now turned into something far darker. And then comes the most chilling part. He warns that even if someone wins a duel, even if they prove their strength fairly, there's still a chance they'll be attacked afterward. That's how broken the system is. Winning doesn't guarantee safety anymore. In fact, it might make you a target. And with that, the story sets a tense and uneasy tone, like something terrible is waiting just around the corner. And then suddenly everything explodes, not with battle, but with news. Aries has won. The duel of decision is over, and the result spreads across Valhalla faster than anyone could have imagined. This isn't just some quiet announcement either. It's broadcast using a magical communication device, meaning everyone sees it, everyone hears it, and no one can ignore it. Aries, a name that many didn't take seriously before, has now climbed to the position of the second strongest in all of Valhalla. That's not just impressive. That's terrifying. The reactions are immediate and intense. Some people are in complete shock. How did someone so young reach this level? Others are angry, especially those who feel their own positions are now threatened. You can almost feel the jealousy and fear mixing together. But at the same time, there are those who feel something different, pride. To them, Aries represents something rare. Proof that raw talent and determination can still break through even in a corrupt system. But Aries doesn't stop to enjoy his victory. He doesn't celebrate. He doesn't hesitate. Instead, he does something that instantly shakes the entire power structure of Valhalla. He issues a challenge, not to just anyone, but to the very top. Caesar, the #1 ranked warrior, the man known as Valhalla's strongest swordsman, a figure whose reputation alone is enough to silence a room. And now Aries is standing there, openly declaring that he wants to fight him. This isn't just bold, it's explosive. And just like that, the entire political landscape is thrown into chaos. Nobles, officials, and warriors begin arguing, debating, analysing every possible outcome. Some insist that Caesar's experience and reputation make him unbeatable. Others aren't so sure anymore. Because Aries isn't just some lucky challenger. He has already reached the 6-star aura realm. That level of power isn't normal. It's the kind of strength that can change the outcome of a battle, no matter who stands on the other side. And suddenly, the impossible doesn't seem so impossible anymore. But just as tensions reach their peak, the story takes a sharp turn. Because while Valhalla is busy arguing about duels and rankings, war has already begun. An urgent report arrives like a thunderclap. Dmitri has launched an attack on the northern front line, and far earlier than anyone expected. There's no time to prepare, no time to debate. The enemy is already moving. And this isn't a small force. An army of 100,000 soldiers is advancing toward Valhalla's most important defensive position. 100,000. Just imagining that number is enough to understand the scale of what's coming. This isn't pressure. This is overwhelming force. But the real danger isn't just the number of troops. It's who's leading them. Among the attackers are elite mages, flare mages and phoenix mages, specialists in destruction. Their strategy is brutally efficient. First, they unleash long-range magical bombardment to weaken the fortress. Then, once the defences start to crumble, the main force moves in for close combat. It's a perfect combination of range and power, and then comes the moment that makes everything worse. Felix steps forward, a master of the Phoenix Magic Tower, and with absolute confidence he declares that bringing down Valhalla's walls will take just 1 hour. 1 hour, not a day, not a prolonged siege, just 1 hour to destroy defences that were meant to protect against massive invasions. The defenders hear this, and for the first time real urgency sets in. This isn't a battle they can casually hold. They're already on the clock. Still, Valhalla doesn't stand defenceless. The Mountain Magic Tower takes charge of the defence. Their specialty is protection, reinforcement and endurance. Their master, Uir, leads a group of 100 mages, all focused on one mission: hold the line, block incoming attacks, strengthen the fortress. By as much time as possible, they estimate they can hold out for about 10 days. 10 days until the enemy can fully take control of key territory like Hernard. 10 days sounds like a plan. But plans don't always survive contact with reality. The attack begins. The sky erupts as waves of magical energy crash down onto the fortress. Explosions shake the ground. The defenders immediately activate their strongest protection, the stone shield, a massive magical barrier designed to absorb and resist even the most powerful attacks. At first, it works. The shield holds. For a moment it feels like maybe, just maybe, they can survive this. But then, the attackers reveal something that changes everything. Dispel. A counter-magic designed to erase other magic completely, and its strength depends on one thing: the power difference between the caster and the target, and that's where the defenders realize they're in trouble. The enemy's dispel is faster, stronger, more precise. 50 mages working together with perfect coordination, tearing down magical defences piece by piece. The defenders try to fight back. They even have more mages, 100 of them, but numbers don't matter when the enemy is simply better. Their dispels are too slow, their reactions too late, and then it happens, the moment that changes everything. The stone shield is destroyed, gone, just like that. A defense that was supposed to protect them from total destruction collapses under pressure, and with it, the confidence of the defenders shatters. Panic spreads, orders are shouted in desperation, emergency weapons are prepared, a flame cannon is brought forward. There's even talk of launching a wide-area multi-dispel to try and regain control. But deep down, everyone already knows the truth. They're losing, and what makes it even more terrifying is how fast it's happening. The attackers didn't just break through, they overwhelmed the defences in record time, and in the middle of all this chaos, one name stands out. Edwin, a young mage whose growth is described as abnormal, rapid, unnatural. His progress suggests something even more dangerous, that the enemy isn't just strong, they're evolving at a speed no one can match. And that realization hits harder than any attack, because it means this gap will only get worse. Though once known for leadership, he now stood among the Allied forces as a pure mage, fully committed to his role. While Felix prepared overwhelming offensive spells, Edwin focused on dismantling the enemy's foundation, relentlessly casting Dispel to break Valhalla's magical formations. His mental strength expanded outward, directly interfering with the opposing mages. Instead of clashing head-on with destructive power, Edwin targeted their ability to even cast spells. Following his lead, the Phoenix mages synchronized their actions, repeatedly using Dispel to suppress Valhalla's magic before it could take shape. This strategy reflected Roman Dmitri's long-term vision. He had invested heavily in magical development, understanding that future wars would not be decided by brute force alone. Against fortified nations like Valhalla, magic would become the decisive weapon. Through constant refinement, Dmitri's forces had elevated their mages to a level far beyond ordinary limits. As a result, even though Valhalla's wizards outnumbered them, they struggled to keep up. The difference in skill was undeniable. Among them, Edwin Hector stood out the most. His control was overwhelming, breaking defensive spells in moments and forcing multiple enemy mages to focus on him alone, yet still failing to contain him. Despite coming from a nation not known for magic, Edwin's talent had grown to a level that even the highest authorities of magical knowledge had once desired. Each time he shattered the enemy's defences, Felix and the other mages followed instantly with destructive spells. Their coordination was flawless. Dispel, then destruction. Flames erupted across the battlefield. Explosions echoed one after another, and the once stable magical defences of Valhalla began to weaken. Smoke rose from the castle walls as the strain became visible. Inside, Hœnir urgently commanded repairs, trying to stabilize the collapsing defences. He had been confident that the walls would hold without fail, but in less than an hour, that certainty was shattered. Valhalla's mages desperately poured their energy into maintaining the barrier, working together to restore what had been broken. Yet under Edwin's leadership, the relentless pressure continued. Piece by piece, their defences were worn down. Then, finally, the wall collapsed. The impact shook the battlefield as the fortified barrier gave way, just as Felix had predicted. The path forward was now open. At that moment, the command rang out. Advance. The Allied army surged forward without hesitation, charging through the breach with overwhelming momentum. The battle had reached a turning point. Now, it was Roman Dmitri's move. Elsewhere, Count Gomez pushed forward with growing urgency. News of the northern front being attacked had unsettled him. Roman Dmitri's actions were far bolder than expected. Even with a massive force and the support of Valhalla's elite mages, Gomes believed the defence should have lasted at least 15 days. To him, the real deciding factor lay elsewhere, the outcome of the clash between Aries and Caesar. If Aries were to win, the situation would spiral beyond control. Still, Gomes held on to one assumption. With the Marquis of Killian and the mountain's mages guarding Valhalla, its fall should not come easily. He had not yet realized. The collapse had already begun. At the Temple of Valhalla, Aries stood still, waiting. He had already issued his challenge to Caesar, and now, under the watchful eyes of countless spectators, he remained calm and unmoving. The area was overflowing with people. What began as a staged gathering had turned into a massive crowd as rumours spread, drawing in citizens from all sides. Voices filled the air. Most believed Caesar would win without question. Others hesitated, recalling how Aries had already defeated Alvarez, something no one had expected. The uncertainty only fueled the tension. Through the dense crowd, Count Gomez made his way forward and took his reserved seat. His expression remained controlled, but his thoughts were restless. For Valhalla, this fight could not end in defeat. It wasn't just about Aries winning or losing. If Aries, who once failed to surpass Alvarez, had now risen to challenge the very peak after joining Roman Dmitri, then the meaning was clear. The credit would not belong to Aries alone. It would prove that Roman Dmitri had elevated him to an entirely new level, and that truth was difficult to ignore. Roman had already reshaped the very foundation of swordsmanship, surpassing even legends of the past. If Aries succeeded here, it would only strengthen that narrative. Then the moment arrived. The crowd split apart. Caesar appeared. Every step he took drew complete attention. Unlike the rough and imposing warriors of Valhalla, his presence was composed, almost refined. His appearance was clean and orderly, closer to that of a noble than a battlefield fighter. Only the massive claymore resting on his shoulder revealed his true nature. The weapon looked heavy and unforgiving, something no ordinary person could even lift, let alone wield with ease. He stopped in front of Aries. A faint smile formed on his face. He spoke as if recalling an old memory. 10 years ago, their paths had crossed. At the time, Aries was already a promising warrior, and for a brief moment, he had the chance to learn from Caesar, the strongest swordsman in Valhalla. It had not been a formal bond of master and disciple, but Aries had respected him deeply and listened to his guidance. That short encounter had made one thing clear. The gap between them was overwhelming, and in César's eyes, that gap still remained. He spoke with confidence, even regret, suggesting that Aries had wasted his potential by not fully following him back then. To César, comparisons between himself and Alvarez were meaningless. Those who made such judgments simply didn't understand the true difference in power. With a single motion, he loosened the strap of his claymore and took it in one hand, as if its weight meant nothing. The atmosphere shifted instantly. A quiet pressure spread across the area. César gave Aries one last chance, to kneel, admit his mistake, and swear loyalty to Valhalla's emperor. If he did, César was willing to spare him for the sake of the empire's future. But the moment the sword was drawn, the answer was already clear. Aries smiled. He acknowledged the past without hesitation. Yes, he had once learned from Caesar. Yes, he had always sought growth, no matter who the teacher was. That had never changed. But neither had his resolve. As he raised his own sword, the air between them sharpened. There was no intention of stepping back. Aries' smile slowly deepened as he faced César. He spoke calmly, but his words carried weight. The time he had spent learning under César had been short, only a few days. For Aries, that was always enough. Whenever he felt he had learned all he could from someone, he moved on without hesitation, and César was no exception. People called him the greatest swordsman of Valhalla, yet Aries had never stayed long enough to be shaped by him. To Aries, growth didn't come from clinging to one master, it came from constantly moving forward. Then his tone shifted slightly. What truly amused him wasn't the past, but the present. Even after all this time, César had remained within Valhalla. Meanwhile, Aries had left and found something far greater in Roman Dmitri. After returning from Arcadia, Aries had only a week to prepare for the coming conflict. It was an impossible task. He was expected to face both Alvarez and César, the two strongest pillars of Valhalla. He intended to carry out the mission alone. But before that, Roman Dmitri called him to the training ground. What stood out immediately was the weapon in Roman's hands. It wasn't the sword he was known for. Instead, he held a pair of ordinary-looking blades. Yet Aries understood instantly. Those swords resembled Alvarez's style. Without wasting time, Roman told him to draw his weapon. From that moment, Roman himself would become his opponent. This wasn't reckless training. It was preparation. Roman knew that Aries' mission required overwhelming strength, not just skill. Instead of pushing him blindly into danger, he chose to refine Aries to the point where success was possible. For Aries, it was exactly what he had wanted, a chance to face Roman Dmitri at full strength. But the outcome was absolute. Again and again, Aries was thrown to the ground. Despite his reputation as a genius swordsman, despite countless battles that had shaped his instincts, he couldn't gain the upper hand even once. Each exchange only widened the gap. Roman's dual sword technique reached a level Aries had never imagined. Every movement was precise, every strike unavoidable. It wasn't just strength, it was control, experience, and something beyond both. At some point, Aries realized something unsettling. He couldn't even picture a way to win. It reminded him of the past, of when he first faced César 10 years ago. Back then, the difference between them had been overwhelming as well. But even then, Aries believed it was a gap that could be closed with time. César was strong, but not unreachable. Roman Dmitri was different. Facing him felt like standing before an endless wall. For the first time, Aries understood that surpassing someone might take not just years, but an entirely different level of existence. Then Roman changed his approach. He switched to a claymore. Even though Aries was already exhausted, he couldn't help but laugh at what came next. Roman said he would now raise the level further and fight him the way Caesar would. That day, Aries experienced something completely beyond his world. And standing now before the real Caesar, that experience had already changed everything. There was no need for further words. At Aries's calm but provocative remarks, Caesar's expression hardened. The brief trace of anger on his face said enough. This was no longer a conversation, it was a test of strength. The priest of Valhalla stepped forward and declared the start of the duel. In the next instant, Caesar moved first. His aura erupted violently as he closed the distance in a single burst, embodying the overwhelming, relentless style he was known for. There was no hesitation in his approach, only pressure, meant to crush his opponent before they could react. But as Aries faced that charge, his mind recalled something else. Roman Dmitri's training. Caesar's strength was built on dominance, constant attacks, leaving no room to breathe. And the answer to that kind of opponent had already been shown to him. Meet force with certainty. The first clash shook the ground. Steel collided with a deafening impact, and from that moment on, Caesar didn't stop. His attacks came one after another, each heavier than the last, each carrying enough force to overwhelm an ordinary warrior instantly. Explosions of aura filled the air. Unlike his fight with Alvarez, Aries unleashed his full power from the beginning. His 6-star aura surged outward, matching Caesar's intensity. Even so, the sheer weight behind Caesar's strikes couldn't be ignored. Every blow rattled his body. And yet, there was no fear. Compared to what he had faced during training, this pressure felt manageable. Caesar was fast. His attacks were powerful, but they were still slower and lighter than what Aries had endured against Roman Dmitri. That difference changed everything. Aries remained calm, reading each movement, blocking with precision. Then, in a brief opening between attacks, he struck back. A single counter. Caesar barely avoided it, but the moment alone was enough to shake him. For the first time, his expression twisted, not from effort, but from wounded pride. He attacked again, even more aggressively. To the spectators, it was overwhelming. Even the rankers of Valhalla, watching the duel, knew they wouldn't last long under such pressure. Caesar's relentless style left no space, no escape. But Aries endured. He was pushed back, his body shaken, blood rising to his throat, but he didn't break. Instead, he smiled. Caesar stood at the peak of Valhalla. His strength was undeniable, but beyond that peak, Aries had already seen something greater. Roman Dmitri. Compared to that overwhelming presence, Caesar's attacks no longer felt absolute. They were powerful, but not unreachable. That realization became Aries' confidence. Enraged, Caesar gathered his mana all at once. The air around him twisted as black and red energy surged violently, wrapping around his blade like a storm. This was no longer a test. It was a killing strike. The ground trembled as the power condensed, lightning-like energy tearing through the surroundings. Die! The attack came down with devastating force, and in that moment, Aries looked up calmly. His mind didn't waver. Instead, it returned to the path he had chosen, the teachings he had received. He raised his mana, guided by the Sura method, and for an instant, he remembered the ideal that stood far above everything, the heavenly demon sword, a power he could not yet replicate, but one that showed him exactly where to go next.